Hey everybody, how's it going? Hopefully y'all are having a great day. In today's video, I wanted to expand on a topic that I had covered in a prior video and potentially give you some new conceptualizations about money and its potential uses and benefits to you. Before we get started, I want to give you two quotes, and I think these are going to be very helpful in progressing this idea as we continue throughout the video. First is, having a strong sense of controlling one's life is a more dependable predictor of positive feelings of well-being than any of the objective conditions of life we have considered. Now, this comes from a study that was done by Dr. Angus Campbell that was later produced in a book called The Sense of Wellbeing in America. And basically this quote says that the feeling of controlling one's life was the most consistent denominator across all interviewed participants on what made them have general positive feelings of well-being. And this is important to understand because, among other things, it's this pursuit of feeling control over one's life that appears to be the most consistently correlated to positive well-being, right? So using this logic that this pursuit of control tends to lead to happiness across the board or positive feelings of well-being. This pursuit of money, this pursuit of financial freedom, right, is by extension a pursuit of control, right? So whether it's you're trying to control the options that you have in life, you're trying to control your social status, you're trying to control your time and your freedom of access to that time, whatever the pursuit of control is, the pursuit of money then, through that definition, becomes a pursuit of control. Now, a quick side note that whatever your pursuit of control is within your own personal life, whether it's, pursuit of status, pursuit of controlling one's time, whatever the case is, there isn't really an inherently right or wrong pursuit in that regard, right? One person may pursue status, right? And they may pursue status for any number of reasons, right? But they're doing so because of the paradigms that they have in their life throughout, that they've gathered throughout their life, right? So while one person may think a pursuit of status through buying nice cars, buying nice clothes, they may look at that as a waste of money. The other person may be doing it to kind of maybe help their career. Maybe they're in a career that it benefits you from looking like you have a higher social status, right? With the cars that you drive, whether it's, like a people or client-facing profession, whatever the case may be. There is no inherent right or wrong, right? We have different pursuits that we personally will go after, but nothing's inherently right or wrong. So just wanted to include that little side note. And the second quote is from The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And it reads, let's see. Money's greatest intrinsic value, and this cannot be overstated, is its ability to give you control over your time, right? Now, in today's society, especially given like media consumption and I think honestly just a lack of education broadly with finance, I think money is typically seen as a one-dimensional asset that you can really use to buy either an experience or another asset, right? Now, this isn't wrong, right? I mean, seeing money like this isn't inherently incorrect. I think it's just it's an incomplete view of what money can offer in one's life, right? Again, as Morgan Housel writes, I mean, the greatest intrinsic value is the ability money gives you to control. He quotes time, but specifically control other pursuits, right? Now, what I mean by this, like one-dimensional viewpoint is like, I have $50, I can buy a sweater. So now I have exchanged my time for $50 through work, and then that $50 for a sweater. So therefore my time is that sweater, right? This is a benefit to it. It can certainly help in the pursuit of social status in some cases, right? But it's not always what you can buy with the money. Sometimes it's what the availability of the money can buy and how that can possibly change life events that happen to you, right? I'm going to use this example that was pulled from The Psychology of Money, but let's say you were let go, right? We're going through an economic uncertainty right now, or if you're watching this in the future, we were, and let's say potentially you are going through one right now. let's say you're let go from your job and you have no emergency fund, right? Realistically, if you have no other excess source of income, no support system, you're going out there and you're trying to get a job as soon as possible, right? You have no luxury of choice, right? So this is one control aspect of life that you lose by not having an emergency fund, not having any month's worth of living expenses saved. You don't control the next job that you get. Whatever is the next job you get, that's the one you're going to take. Some of these instances, it's not even in the same field, right? So you could go from being in, tech, and all of a sudden you're going to like customer service, or you're going basically to some unrelated profession, right? Now, maybe early on in your career, that's not a big deal, but when you're later on in your career and you've actually formed kind of a long-standing history, this career shift really can start to negatively impact your experience when trying to find another job within the field, right? As a recruiter, when I first got out of college, the first thing we would look at on resumes is, were there any gap years? And if gap years, what was the explanation? Because if it's not a good explanation, it's hard to convey to hiring managers, hey, this person left the industry from this year to this year, but don't worry, they're still just as good as someone who has been working consistently in the industry, right? So now you have an instance where this lack of availability negatively impacts your image to other employers, right? So not only do you not have control over the next job that you get, but you also lose control over the image that you have and the reputation that you have within your career. So this is an instance where having a lack of X amount of months worth of living expenses actually can negatively impact the control that you have in your life. Now let's cover a different scenario. Let's say instead of having 0, you have 3 months worth of living expenses. Well, now we start to see a bit of a different scenario play out. Let's say you're still let go from your job, but you do have 3 months worth of living expenses. You don't necessarily have to take the next job, right? You can afford to take a few interviews and, potentially not get some, but get further looks on the others. You have essentially a wider time horizon to land a field in your career. Let's say you do. Now, you're not leaving the industry and then coming back. You were laid off and you were able to find another good job within the industry. Now, effectively, honestly, like a catastrophic career event of situation 1 has now been turned into just a mere road bump, right? Yes, you took some time off. You were looking for a job. You lost your emergency fund, but ultimately your career is still intact, right? Let's take this a step further. Let's say you were let go from your job and you instead have 8 months worth of living expenses. Well, now this 8 months worth of living expenses affords you the ability to not only take a little bit of time off, but to also acquire new skills. It allows you to really advance your career. And in some cases, when you take the next job, you might even be more qualified and in a better career position than you were prior to being laid off in the first place. So now this availability of money, not necessarily what the money is buying today, but what the money could buy in the future, is really what's giving you the peace of mind during this like economic uncertainty, right? So it goes further to state that when you have the availability of an emergency fund, right? Not when you're using the emergency fund, but the availability of an emergency fund dictates the average level of stress that you're going to feel in times of jobs uncertainty or economic uncertainty, right? Across the broader market. So this is kind of like an illustration of the alternative way of viewing money is it allows you control, right? It allows you control over the unpredictability of life itself, right? No one expects to get laid off, but your availability of an emergency fund, the availability of money, allows you to circumvent the forced event on you from life, and it gives you back control. So hopefully this is helpful. It's relatively straightforward as far as like video length is concerned, but it's a very important topic that I think is very important to understand. It's something that I didn't really even conceptualize until reading this book, and I think it's a very important thing. And personally, I'll be introducing this into my financial education courses as a core part of understanding how money can help one, get to financial freedom, or ultimately just pursue any control that they would like over their life. So hopefully you found this helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section. I'll be happy to respond. But without anything else, Hope you all have a great day. See ya.